And it's now time for SME Onpoint. This week, Statistics South Africa released the latest quarterly labour force survey for the first quarter of 2021, which indicates an increase in the number of unemployed people in the country to an all-time high of 32.6%. This week, we feature a self-taught baker who had relied on the generosity of friends and neighbours to start what is now a growing business when he was retrenched. Do take a look at Davy Tsopo's story, which was edited by Azande Mbalula. Davy Tsopo knows the pain of being jobless all too well. At the height of the COVID-19 lockdown in 2020, when he and his wife had just welcomed a baby, he was retrenched as a cleaner at a restaurant which closed down.
I was a cleaner. I used to do the dishes and floors. So it was long. I used to work long hours. Like sometimes I would start at 9 until midnight. So more than 15 hours, 16 hours shift. It was a bit hectic, but I had no choice. I had to work for my family.
Upon hearing of Tsopo's job loss, his neighbour extended a helping hand by sharing his Wi-Fi password so that Tsopo could keep himself entertained. Tsopo used the access to the internet to watch baking shows. These inspired him to start mixing in the kitchen. With a new stove that sat unused, he tried his hand at baking.
My first cake, it was a disaster. So from that time, when stove was connected, I started baking muffins and scones. Then I started posting on my WhatsApp status, muffins for sale, and my neighbors started ordering those cakes, muffins and scones. Yeah. I was selling a packet for 25 rand, 30 rand, 60 rand, it depends on the size. Then I started posting on my Instagram stories.
Tsopo credits the support of his friends who posted his work on social media. The exposure sparked many orders from customers and advice on running a business still in its infancy. And now, as the baking business grows, he faces a fresh challenge: load shedding. The erratic national power supply is hampering his ability to work.
It's a big challenge, especially, baking requires electricity. It's a very big, sometimes I'm forced to check every day the schedule for load shedding. Each and every day when they've got load shedding, I don't bake. Because I remember last year, I used to struggle with load shedding. 15 minutes, cake is in the oven, then load shedding comes. I had to throw that. So load shedding is a big challenge for me.
It's been a year since Tsopo tried his hand at baking, and when he lost his job, he never could have imagined how his life would have changed by just taking that first step. His goal is now to save enough money to open a bakery.
I know somehow, there's someone who is retrenched right now. What I can say is try something. We still have lovely people in this world. No matter how small it is, no matter even small thing like amakwinyanyana, acha, ekonen, one day that thing will take you to a bigger place.
Liabo Setho, SABC News, Johannesburg. Thank you so much to Davy Tsopo for sharing his story with us. We hope that his story will encourage you if you unfortunately have lost your job as well, that there is a whole world for the taking in the world of entrepreneurship by just getting started. So let's take the issue of unemployment a little further by looking at how the SME sector can potentially have the positive knock-on effect on creating more economic growth as well as employment opportunities. Garth Rossiter, the Chief Risk Officer of LulaLend, is joining us via Zoom. Garth, welcome to SME Onpoint. What do you think of how Davy has taken the opportunity of being retrenched and used it wisely?
Hi, Diabo. Yeah, thanks for having me. I think it's incredible. I think it speaks to what a lot of people are doing in South Africa at the moment. A lot of people we're seeing doing the same sort of thing. For me, what it shows is the loop between innovation, which was clearly seen over there, and necessity, I suppose, in terms of reinventing yourself. I think that's critical. But the link with entrepreneurship and economic development are just they're intrinsically linked. So growing businesses creates jobs, which generally, and these businesses tend to be more innovative as well. So those two factors tend to raise living standards for all, which is what's fantastic.
Yeah. So Garth, in reality, so the SME sector, it creates less jobs, particularly here in South Africa, than anywhere else in the world. Around only about 68% of jobs are created by the SME sector, compared to when you look at other countries who report numbers of around 90%. What would you say are the top hindrances that you have identified that make South Africa so much less behind, or so much behind in creating jobs through entrepreneurship?
Yeah, Liabo, I think you're right. I mean, it's probably not as high as a lot of other countries, but I think when you consider 98.5% of the businesses in South Africa are SMEs. And 60% or 60+% of those private sector jobs are created by those businesses. And they still create 40% of the GDP within South Africa. I think some of the hindrances we're probably seeing there is red tape. As we saw in that excerpt before, load shedding doesn't help, doesn't encourage people to go to get involved in small business and start their own businesses. It becomes a very scary place to be. But I think red tape and government support. Our government did try. I mean, they came out with the 200 billion loan guarantee scheme, but the take-up of that's been less than 50%. So what we see with SMEs and small businesses is what really hinders them is their access to cash. And I think a TransUnion did a survey of about 10,000 businesses where they said access to cash restricted their growth more than anything else. Access to cash flow, and funding issues. So that's obviously the gap we're trying to fill at LulaLend.
Yeah. So at LulaLend, you defy the usual. You can advance cash, you can advance loans to those that actually want to start businesses. But I also want to take a look at some of the industries that have lost most jobs in this first quarter of 2021, particularly construction, trade, private households, transport and agriculture. What kind of businesses can one think of going into if you were in that sector? What kind of a business can one start to think of, and can they approach LulaLend to start with the capital, for instance?
Yeah, well, we ask a good question. So we find businesses that have operated for more than a year. It's just how our financial modelling works on the businesses. So if within those industries, obviously there are a lot of opportunities for businesses. But I guess that's the beauty of innovation and entrepreneurship is finding gaps where other people wouldn't have seen them. And that innovation leads to greater efficiencies in society, which has a knock-on benefit for everyone. And large corporates don't provide that. So it's that initial startup
capital
entrepreneurship leading to small business and which drives the growth we're looking for.
Yeah. Just before I let you go, I'm sure there's someone who's really, really keen to hear. Can Garth share with me about if, for instance, I want to start a business in agriculture, what do you think one can get into?
Well, agriculture is a very wide kind of sector. In terms of, across anything, if you were growing crops versus you'd have to decide what your appetite for risk is. And I think that's the first point you really want to start, because agriculture is a very cyclical and seasonal industry. And you can invest a lot of money before you actually start seeing a return out of that. And that's what creates a lot of the risk. So it really depends on what sort of risk you're willing to take. Yeah.
I see also that there's a lot of people that are also going into agro-processing, and hopefully this is something that our viewers can also take a look at. But Garth Rossiter, the Chief Risk Officer at LulaLend, thank you so much for sharing your views with us here on SME Onpoint. Well, that's all from SME Onpoint for this week. Do remember to support small businesses in your communities and keep the rands and cents circulating in your communities if you can. Please do take some photos and post them on our SME page, which is our Facebook SME page, which is at SME Onpoint. Let's see the kind of businesses that you are supporting. We will retweet them, we will share them, but please do share with us your weekend. Let's see which businesses you are supporting in your communities, and we are sure to also try and support them as much as we can. That's all from me for this weekend. Do enjoy your weekend, but up next is Books on Point with Nastasia Aronsa. Please stay with us.